So let's talk about 2020 census. This Lori Daniels, this non-ADOS. Okay, she's a African. She's half Jamaican American, half Black American, but she is going to talk about the census and its importance. And she's on this campaign of telling other diaspora that they should check Black. And I'm gonna just give my rebuttal on why I don't think they should, and why we should use this 2020 census to our benefit, or at least to let the chips fall where they lay. Let's determine things, and let's let things be identified the way they should be, not trying to use this as a way to get our numbers up.
So 2020 census is super
Yes,
important.
it is.
The citizenship piece got knocked down by the courts.
It did indeed. We were very happy about that. And there are still 5 additional cases that are making their way through the courts. So we're hopeful. And we know that the case that the New York Attorney General just won, and we represented the New York State Black, Puerto Rican, Asian, and the New York State Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus as amici in that case. We were excited.
So as amici.
Employment is so low is because a lot of people have 2 jobs. She needs to learn basic things about what to be a representative. And when you look at what's happened in New York City and New York State, we're losing people like crazy. We are going to lose our influence in Washington during the next redistricting because we'll lose about 1 to 2 congressional seats. Now we're telling business, don't come here. Just because she has a progressive agenda, which some people like, does not mean she has the city's best interest. What she showed me today or yesterday is that she only cares about herself, not about her colleagues in Carolyn Maloney, and definitely not about the people she represents, because those people would be getting jobs as well.
So let's talk about 2020 census. This Lori Daniels, this non-ADOS. Okay, she's a African. She's half Jamaican American, half Black American, but she is going to talk about the census and its importance. And she's on this campaign of telling other diaspora that they should check Black. And I'm gonna just give my rebuttal on why I don't think they should, and why we should use this 2020 census to our benefit, or at least to let the chips fall where they lay. Let's determine things, and let's let things be identified the way they should be, not trying to use this as a way to get our numbers up.
The census is a national count of the people who live in the country. That census count, that data set that comes out of that, determines who gets what share of the $800 billion in government resources that's spent every year. But let's put that to the side. $800 billion, just put it to the side. It also determines, that data set, that total population number, how many representatives your community gets, and what are the boundary lines for your community. This is why this is going to matter, because in this next election, this election 2018 and 2020, that's going to determine who draws the maps. Who draws the district lines for your community? Are they going to pack all the Black people into one district, which is known as packing? Or are they going to divide the Black community and slice it and dice it and manipulate it so much that we're so spread out across so many communities that we can never, even if we all voted together on the same thing, never could mount enough votes in order to win anything? That's the power that is in who's going to take the House, and whatever your house, your 2 state houses are in your state, whoever wins those in this election and in 2020 will determine who draws the maps. Why does this matter? You need, in order to amend the Constitution, you need to convince 2/3 of both houses of federal Congress, not your state, the federal Congress, where Lindsey Graham and all them are right now. Lindsey Graham has already said, after Trump announced that he was going to issue an executive order, Lindsey Graham is going to be introducing legislation that tracks the language of the executive order. Lindsey Graham has to convince 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate to sign on to this language, which I believe in this era of rampant white supremacist racism, he will be able to do. Once he has convinced 2/3 of both the Congress and the Senate to sign on to this legislature, then you have to get 3/4 of the states to ratify that language, right? So if they introduce language that says we want to repeal the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship, if he convinces the House and the Senate 2/3 majority to do so, then it goes to the states. I just said, who draws the maps and who determine, and the number of representatives you have is based on the census, which we know from last week. They're inserting a citizenship question. They want to drive an undercount because the undercount will mean that black communities, brown communities, non-white communities will have reported less numbers than are actually there, which means the next time we get representatives doled out to us and apportioned to us, we will not get the true number of representatives, which means we will not get the true number of votes that we need in our state governments.
Or money.
Or money. Now, here's why this matters. Republicans already control both houses in 32 states. That means they control the Assembly and they control the Senate in 32 states. You only need 38 states in order to appeal an amendment or to amend the Constitution. So all they need is an additional 6 states where they are controlling both houses, where they would have a Republican majority sufficient enough that they could legally and realistically discuss what we gonna do about this here Constitution and all these rights that we done give to these brown people.
And that includes even slavery?
Yes.
Voting rights?
Yes.
How about the Second Amendment? Could the same hold if there is a blue wave next Tuesday?
Absolutely.
And somehow the Democrats get a hold of 38 states? Could the Second Amendment be because
theoretically,
this
yeah,
is right,
but the Democrats aren't going to get
no
that.
I know, but if we're talking about things, right, and people fear they're gonna take my guns, but you want to put the 14th Amendment on the table,
right?
Let's put all of the amendments on the table. I'm just saying, like,
okay, she goes on and rants more and more about white people and racism and whatnot and all other stuff. But anyways, 2 things real quick before I forget. So, y'all remember back when Trump was talking about getting rid of the birthright citizenship thing, a lot of black folks got in their feels and started jumping in front of it and trying to protect it and defend it, even though it has nothing to do with us. A loophole, right, for DACA, for illegal immigrants, is birthright citizenships, right? People, and it's not just for Mexicans and whatever. In fact, Chinese are doing this actually in California. That is how they're getting over. I think Russians are doing it too. Like in large numbers. They're coming here, having the babies, lying about why they came here, and they're staying here. So a way to curtail that would be to deal with this whole birthright citizenship thing, which was intended for us, which did give us legitimacy as being citizens of this country. However, it is a loophole for undocumented immigrants, not just the Mexicans coming over the border, but more likely for the Chinese who are doing it like crazy in California, and also the Russians are doing it too. So they're taking something that was meant for us, ADOSers, and they're using it to gain legitimacy and being here. So anyways, we remember that, right? And another thing that happened was Trump wanted to, and many Republicans were just like saying like, yo, when the census happens, y'all people who are illegal or undocumented or even legitimate immigrants, y'all need to write down who y'all really are, right? As we've talked about before, how a lot of non-ADOSers, other diaspora, they don't identify as black, and our bad because we have the identity crisis that they don't have, right? They come from predominantly black countries, so identifying as black isn't as important to them as it is to us, being our history in this country. This young lady here is trying to do this campaign where she's telling them to check black. I don't agree with that because, well, first of all, her mindset is, well, we need these people to check black because they live in our communities and they're going to vote Democrat and blah, blah, blah. Ironically, that's not necessarily the case because many of these Africans, I'm not mad at them for this, but they're not all on the Democratic bandwagon either. Many of them, particularly the African men who are patriarchal, they tend to vote Republican. Even Obama's African or Kenyan brother, he voted for Trump. He's not on that Democrat plantation. So I'm simply saying her mindset is, oh, we're going to play this game and get our numbers up. But that ain't necessarily true. Just because they identify as black don't mean they're going to vote with you either. Now, at the local level, it doesn't matter, but because you're going to be in a district and you're going to be lumped together, you're going to get representation or whatever. But at the federal level, or for at least national elections, what she's saying is not necessarily true. Black Americans, ADOSers, are the only group foolish enough to vote as a block. Other people vote 50-50, white folks 70-30, usually Hispanics. Again, other people split their vote. There's a continuous split where both parties have to do things to get their attention. We the only fools that vote in the block. But anyways, so yeah, that happened. So Trump wanted to make them people who are undocumented say they undocumented. You think that that's, a radical thing to do. It's not. And her and many other people fought hard against this. And they won. In a federal court in New York, judge shot the shit down, said no, illegals don't have to identify that they don't supposed to be here. All right, that's out of the way.
Immigration politics in the Republican Party about anchor babies. Meaning if someone comes across the border and they're in the United States, either if they're here legally on a visa or if they come in illegally, but they have a child here, then is that child a citizen? There's a big debate. Donald Trump says it shouldn't be. Jeb Bush says the 14th Amendment says you are. I won't change it. But he used the term. He got testy when reporters kept asking him, why are you using the term? A lot of Latino groups don't like the term. They think it's off-putting and pushing off to use the term anchor baby. So Jeb Bush yesterday is trying to make peace with some of the Latino groups who are mad at him, and here's how he decides to do it.
This is ludicrous for the Clinton campaign and others to suggest that somehow I'm using a derogatory term. What I was talking about was the specific case of fraud being committed where there's organized efforts, and frankly, it's more related to Asian people coming into our country, having children, in that organized efforts, taking advantage of a noble concept with his birthright citizenship. I support the 14th Amendment.
Now, if you talk to state officials and national officials, but especially in the state of California, they say this is a problem. This, Asians coming in on tourist visas and the like. But okay, it's an issue. It's a relatively small issue, and it may well be an issue in California. But for Jeb Bush to be stuck in this quicksand, I am now convinced that anchor babies could become the self-deport of 2016. Once Mitt Romney went there in the campaign 4 years ago, it was over with Latinos.
Miami to give birth. As a result, their babies are American citizens. That's right, Russian mothers, American babies.
I'm such type of mom who want to give her child the best what I can do.
And the best is an American passport. To give birth in Miami, a status symbol back in Russia. While the practice is controversial, it's perfectly legal. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution makes anyone born on American soil an American citizen.
If American citizen, American passport is a big plus for the baby, why not?
Among the pluses, these kids will have the right to live and work here, receive social services, and when they turn 21, they'll have the right to sponsor their parents for an American green card.
We're the only place just about that's stupid enough to do it.
As a candidate, Donald Trump called for an end to birthright citizenship, declaring it the biggest magnet for illegal immigration.
You want to get rid of birthright citizenship?
You have to get rid of, yes, you have to. What they're doing, they're having a baby, and all of a sudden nobody knows the baby's here. You have no choice.
But ironically, condo buildings bearing the name Trump are among the most popular for Russian birth tourists.
I live in Trump Palace. It's a very popular place.
And housing in buildings with the Trump name are advertised by birth tourism agencies catering to Russian clients. Some package.
So obviously everything you just heard was prior to the midterms of 2018. This is her content, whatever she just said. She correctly breaks down the importance and the money and the redistricting and all that stuff is going to happen. Why this is important. It's funny. I was talking to my grandma. I'm like, because my address is unlisted, which is kind of good and bad, but my mail went to her house and I'm picking up my census stuff and they sent me like mad forms like, oh, grandma, did you fill out the census stuff? And I was just messing with her, trolling, like, this is a legal binding document and you have to do it. She looked at me like, shit, I ain't never fill that out. And she was like, I don't want to do that. That's how they count us. She just said it like that. But anyways, one thing that the census is going to do, one, I just off the bat, it'll tell you a lot of things, who's marrying who's whatever, and all that stuff, and we'll get the information about all these swirlers, all these sisters online complaining about who marrying who and whatnot, black men. Those numbers will be updated, and we will possibly see that there's an uptick. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not, but we're gonna get the numbers on their swirling numbers. Now, obviously, all men of all races hop the fence more than women and their female counterpart. But I'm just saying the uptick from the last census hopefully will show us if all this we're swirling, we're doing our best life, we're gonna know the truth to all that stuff. So either we're gonna know if it's happening for them or not, or we're gonna probably get enough for the data to know that they can stop complaining about the brothers who swirl and focus on living their best life, right? There's an article today that I kept seeing on my timeline. Why won't black women do what Tamara Hall did? Wait till she was damn near 50 to have a baby by a white dude. Whatever, I don't know. But we're going to get that information. And actually, before I forget, the census is important, too, in determining the whole octoroon biracial thing, too, right? I might have a clip, actually, I did record it a while back, of a discussion that happened actually on the Karen Hunter show, conveniently, where it was Kit Shapiro, Eartha Kitt's granddaughter or daughter, and then it was basically breaking down how, when filling out the census, why people should fill out what they really are and stop just checking black because that's how they feel. When it comes to certain departments, other, you know, if a person is just checking black, but they're biracial and they live in a white community and they live in a gay, and they are not in the economic condition that other black people are in, that has an effect on the outcomes on how money in these programs are distributed, right? So I think I have to find that clip though, but it actually even goes as far as that's how important the census is, that it will deal with the issue of that. Now, one of the major reasons why I want folks to check the boxes that they're supposed to check and use the new, because this is what the whole video is about the sister trying to tell other diasporas to not identify as what they really are, but just to check black. It's because of, what was I thinking? I'm losing my thoughts. Oh, the major reason why, because we get all these conversations about the detractors around the conversation around reparations, right? How are we going to figure out this? How are we going to figure out that? Who gets what and who's entitled to that? Well, one simple solution to start all that off is this 2020 census. If you want to know who is what and who checks what and who identifies what, this census is going to help determine that. And that can be the catalyst for making an argument for who gets what when it comes to reparations. So that's the major reason why I want them undocumented to be, even though it got shut down by the courts in New York, they should have to say that they are undocumented, and those who are not ADOS should specify that they are not ADOS, majority for the concept of reparations around that whole conversation. So that's one major issue why I don't co-sign her just check black movement that she's trying to orchestrate here. That's the major reason, is around the conversation around reparations. And it even can deal with, if you want to unpack all of that, I know G. Lowry said his half black octoroon looking ass is going to be in line for reparations because he's half black. But I think it will deal with that. It's funny too how people want to shoot these things out as why it can't happen and why it won't work and this and that. But I'm like, all these things have been done before, right? The Native Americans found a way to deal with their situation. I don't know the name of the tribe, but a dude I used to work with, Native American, they were having a problem because their money with the casinos, basically every kid gets $2,400 every 2 or 3 months. I'm not sure, I forgot. This is over 10 years ago. It is obviously more money now because they keep going and renegotiating and getting more money. But his specific tribe had a problem with these bad-built Indian women going outside of the reservation and having babies by other races of men. And that was where a woman could have like 4 kids, none of them by Native American men. And the tribe was like, yo, chill, we not tolerating that no more. So what they did was they said, you got to be full-blooded or 75% or whatever in order to be entitled to this specific money. So I'm saying all these things, even when it comes down to the whole what do half-breeds get or biracials get, that's all been done before. There's litmus tests for all of that stuff. So those are just deflections, and it's complex. I understand that, and it's deep, and you got some weird situations where, you know, you heard Michi X talk about, well, my peoples is Poland, and they didn't own slaves, and you got more white blood in you than I do, and this and that. All that. I get all that. That's a lot of stuff to unpack there, but it has been done before. The Native Americans found a way to say, we not giving these casino checks to people, to these women who were abusing the system by going outside of the reservation, having babies by all these different races of men, and then bringing them back to reservations, and she's getting $2,500 for each kid, plus her own $3,500 every 2 or 3 months. I forget how it works out. Again, this was a conversation I had with this guy over 10 years ago, but they dealt with that. But anywho, this census is going to address all these issues, and it can be used to your benefit to address these issues. So this is my issue too with the whole census thing, right? So the Boule Bird, Roland Martin, he's always crying about voter suppression, no matter, even if it's record number turnout, record number registered, he stays on this whole voter suppression. All this, all he talks about every election cycle, right? And I'm like, well, you're old black media. You are black journalists. You know about politics. We don't know what we talking about on YouTube. We just sitting behind keyboards, right? But yet you have not talked about the redistricting that's going to happen. See, this is my issue as well with this whole situation. That's not being talked about in black media, right? She talks about it a little bit, but only into flip it her own way. But California, New York, and Chicago, well, Illinois and New York and California. Now, notice all three of these states have sanctuary cities. All of these states are preparing to deal with the fact that your black asses can't afford to live there, and y'all run into Texas, y'all run into Carolina, y'all going to Atlanta. Stop going to Atlanta, that shit is full. But y'all can't afford, because of these Democratic policies, because of these, like you saw in New York with Amazon leaving. I have a video and thoughts on that too, but that's going to have an effect on the state. So they're always talking about racism and gerrymandering and all this other stuff, but y'all not even talking about how y'all policies are hurting black people who live in y'all major cities. In Chicago right now, I think because of the way they did their whole situation where all the black people ran out to the burbs, and they're raising their taxes on property to the point where black folks are losing their house like crazy. That's going to have an effect on political power. Now, what California is doing, because they have the most electoral votes, they're the biggest, whatever, they've already replaced your black ass with their illegal immigrants and Mexicans and whatnot. So they're good. And you see that Chicago is trying to become a sanctuary city. I mean, they already are, but they're trying to, be legitimized as one. They're already doing things where they're trying to like give undocumented ID so that they, now this is the trick fuckery. They're saying no, it's not so they can vote, but they won't specify whether or not it could be used to vote. So all that stuff is going on, and the same thing is going on with Cuomo and de Blasio in New York City with, again, they're trying to legitimize illegal immigrants because they're preparing for all you black folks who are leaving, going to the red states in the South. Got to keep reiterating that. You're leaving these blue states with all these democratic laws and democratic policies, and you're running to the South. No connection being made. Okay, never mind. Y'all going to the racist red states with all the tiki torch motherfuckers, right? Y'all leaving blue, kumbaya, multicultural California, New York, Chicago to go to red states. Just keep remembering that, right? But that's going to have an effect on your political power in D.C. So New York is possibly going to lose 2 seats, and so is Illinois. And California is good because they've already placed your black guys with a bunch of illegal immigrants and whatnot. And I'm saying, why isn't that being talked about by the Boule Bird? Why aren't black media outlets making that point that, yo, what can we do to keep black people here? They're not addressing that. They're just making moves to get rid of your ass or to replace you. Why won't y'all address that? Again, the Boule Bird, every election cycle, since I've been watching his shows, voter suppression, voter suppression, voter suppression. But y'all not talking about the policies that make it difficult for black folks to stay there. Y'all all supporting AOC and Bernie Sanders. They're going to raise... Look, black folks can't afford to stay in states already that are heavily taxed. Bernie Sanders, AOC, they're going to raise the shit out of the taxes if they had their agenda and they had their way. I just want y'all to address that real quick, though, because that's going to have just as much as, right, like she said already, the redistricting and how the districts are broken up. Again, we already know every month I read a different article about specifically people leaving the state of New York, people leaving Illinois, and people leaving California. But again, California's already good. And I have yet to hear the commentary about that. And what happened with Amazon, no matter how you feel about that, yes, it was crony capitalism. Yes, I said to myself, the city that has the most corruption is going to get Amazon in their state. Most political corruption. I said that when they were doing a little shopping around, trying to see who's going to get what. It is what it is. If you're a true fiscal conservative, you don't like crony capitalism, but it is what it is. There's externalities in all this shit, good and negative. I'm not against it or for it, but it's a reality. That's how the game is played. But anyways, all those jobs are gone from New York. And guess what? A lot of those black folks that were hoping for that and depending on that, they're going to have to leave and go follow those jobs. And they're going to go to some red state that doesn't even need the workforce. And they're going to get those jobs down there. But that's something I want black, so-called old black media who know everything and know how politics works. And instead of crying about Trump all the time, maybe you should address the shit that's happening in your own backyard. You push and promote all these Democratic politicians to get in, but y'all not addressing the fact that black folks can't stay in these big major cities up north and in California. Why y'all not addressing that? All right, so I'm not being lazy. I'm giving you receipts. This can be the video in itself, but I did want to discuss this. So, Salah Abrams, whatever. This is the woman who did not know that she was half black. She's half black and Asian. Basically, her mom was being a thought, and she cheated on her, what she thought was her white dad. She has a sister who is white and Asian, and the mom had an affair with a black dude, and she didn't even know she was half black until she was like 10 or something like that, because she made a joke about black people, and her dad said some shit like, well, why are you making those jokes? You one of them. And that's when she found out that she was half black. Anyways, she actually gives her reasons why she does believe that people should check the right boxes and dictate who they really are. I wasn't just talking out of my ass. There's validity to checking, even when it comes to biracials and active rooms and all that stuff, because it deals with it. It has an effect on the data and information. And when you studying different things like abuse and, you know, who's dying from what, those things matter because, you know, DNA and genotypes and all that stuff matters, and hereditary and all that stuff matters. But she's actually going to give her reasons why she thinks when you fill out the census, you should make these things. Now, this panel was, you know, again, this should be a video in itself, but it was like they had Talcum X, whoever was the dude who, you know, tried whatever, fake white, not knowing who he is. Same situation probably where somebody could have cheated. Forgot his name. Sean King. He's on there. Kiss Chappelle's daughter's on there. Some white dude who's, you know, probably a Kappa is on there. I don't know, but it's this weird ass panel of pro-black half-breeds and transracials on the panel. But anyways, she gives her opinion on why it's important to fill out data the proper way, and if you are mixed race, why you should also do that.
Support the continued dehumanization and degradation of black women in real life. And so when my researchers are putting together the evaluations and they're putting, you know, check multiple categories, you know, I'm so resistant to that notion because of the fact I'm like, look, the data can't be clean. It's not clean. And if they put black, you've got to put, okay, black, is it Caribbean? Is it West Indian?
Why does that matter?
But here's the thing. in domestic violence, right? So I serve on the board of directors for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I'm a survivor myself. When you're looking at resources, when you're looking at outside of just the census, when we're looking at data that the FBI collects on victims of gendered violence, the group with the highest percentage of domestic violence is multiracial, 53%. Black women come in second with 38%, followed by Latino, and then white, and Asian are there now. And Native American women, that's a whole different category. Okay, but we're talking is it per capita, right? Per capita, right? So with that, multiracial is problematic to me when people start checking everything off. Let's say my sister, right, who's Asian and white, if she were a victim of domestic violence and checked multiracial as a category, she goes into that category, but we don't know. Is that a black woman who is suffering under systemic racism and who's been abused and not treated seriously by the police and who's being re-victimized in the court system because of the color of her skin? Because, look, there are people who look just like Laura who will go on Match.com. I've seen it all the time. I've seen people look like Idris Elba putting on there that they are Scottish, they are, they're English.
Idris on Match.com. Hold on. Wait, hold on. I know I'm married, but hold on. Are you saying he has a hall pass?
Looking like.
My hall pass.
And here they check every category, and I'm like, what is this fascination with your proximity to whiteness, as if it somehow legitimizes your existence, and the fact that you have white blood in you somehow makes you more human or more exotic. And I'm like, look,
but that's the narrative that I hope to fight, and it goes back to Laura's visceral reaction to Salai, being strongly black and Laura being proudly black, and them having different experiences, because at the end of the day, we're all valid, right?
But my question would be, so what box would I check? According to your, what you're saying, because I can't check necessarily the black box because my father was as white as the coffee cup.
And quite frankly, I mean, your kids could never check the black box either. Or their kids, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
Well, the one
right.
drop.
Well,
and
you know
what?
When
you talk about these boxes, though, here, people misunderstand. The reason it's important to track the information, you're right in terms of why you track it. And Sean, what you're talking about is right. Everyone here is correct in why you're tracking it. But the reason you track it is because a lot of legislation that's actually current is based on the requirement that they be tracking the data so we can actually follow up. Is there a problem in the drawing of voter districts? You will not know that if you just check other.
Yet they still gerrymander, and they still.
But they sometimes gerrymander, which is why when I was in the voting section of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, we had to rely on the American Constitution, which is the smaller form of the census, which is done yearly, to figure out how to prove it. Because when I was talking about what happened with you, Sean, it's about the forest through the trees. People, I'm a trial attorney. If I'm in front of you as a jury and say, I can either show you circumstantial evidence about my theories of how this person was murdered, or I can show you a videotape and show you the actual scene. You want the direct evidence, which is why census and statistics give you the direct evidence.
But the problem with being able to check, to Salai's point, is that multiracial becomes a very broad category, which you don't know what makes up that multiracial, those pieces.
Which I think that's why the census forms should change so that you can delineate.
I was just going to say, I'm going through the census now. When I read the definition for white, I was like, really? Mm-hmm. I mean, they threw in everything and the kitchen sink. Black, they just relegated to the lower part of Africa. Mm-hmm. Like, really? You can divvy up Africa like that and determine that? Okay. And then they, of course, American Indian. But here's what's crazy. You can be white twice on the census. So you're white alone, right? And then you're white Hispanic, right? So you can check that box. White not Hispanic, 2 or more races. I mean, there's so much confusion on these. If we just did white and black, I would be okay with that because
But all the Asians,
but we
would
did
be
that
like,
for
so
a
what?
while.
Then they're black. Asians are black. Latinos are black. Everybody's black. You're either white or black. That's my world. We're either going to do it this way or not at all.
And that's why you don't write the census forms, Karen.
Well, I should be president.
But Dr. Goodman,
So
we
we've
talked about it on the break that they are changing the form to accommodate that.
So we've had decennial censuses since 1790.
Right.
Never once has it not changed. We are always changing our racial categories because of political pressures, etc. So we've never had clear definitions, multiracial, whatever. They're always cockamamie, confused, whatever. Yet, I think Laura's right. I mean, these are really powerful data come out of not just the census, but we know because of collecting racial data that there's a 12-fold difference in average wealth between white families, black families, Hispanic families. That is powerful. Now, the question is, do we do anything about it?
Exactly. And that's where
and that's racism.
Okay.
That's
Thank
racism.
you.
That's true.
Can we tackle that? We got to do a part 2.
Anyways, that happened. They had a little discussion on why they thought it matters and the importance of being specific on the census and not just letting people identify how they feel, but actually identifying who they really are. That all matters. But anyways, this young lady does not want to do that. She does not want other diaspora to identify with where they really come from and who they really are. She wants them to just check the big old box of black just so they can fit in with us. And again, we know that even outside of the census, that doesn't benefit ADOS. A lot of these places, corporations, colleges, again, Harvard, they can say, well, we got 100 black people. But when you look at the data and find out, well, out of that 100, only 5 of them are ADOS. The rest of them are Caribbean and they're black Brits or they're black Nigerians or whatever, right? That don't benefit us. So I think we should delineate. I think we should be specific. I think it makes sense it will help the reparations argument heavily by pointing out who is who. But anyways, let her tell you why she wants y'all to just check black and not check who you really are.
New York really paid close attention to what was happening, and as you read the opinion, judges have this way of just being snarky without being snarky. It's a wonderful opinion that really does speak to the ways in which the Trump administration used everything but the truth to try to get this citizenship question on the census. And we believe that part of the reason they were doing that was to really help to do what has been done, which is to strike such fear in the heart of so many communities of color, black communities, immigrant communities, low-income communities, in order to not have a full and accurate count on the census. And one of the things that you and I had been talking about over the Twitter sphere was this new category that they're going to be using on the census. It's a new racial category. Typically, what has happened in the past is you had categories like Negro on the census, right?
Negro, white, and other.
Negro, white, and other. And now for the first time this year, or on the 2020 census, which is our next census, there's going to be an opportunity for black people to not just say their race, but also their ethnic origin, where they're from nationally. It's just really...
So for you for example,
yeah.
you would click check black.
I would check black as my race.
And then as your
I could
subcategory,
ethnically identify as either African American if I'm taking my father's side, or Jamaican American if I'm taking my mother's side.
Would it be Caribbean American, or are they being that specific?
You can be as specific as Trinidad. You can be specific as, you can name the country of origin. And, there are some concerns within the black community because a lot of us like,
my
well, wait
first
a minute.
thing was divide and conquer.
Right. They try to separate the blacks.
Yeah.
Right. And that makes sense because we know how race is used in this country. And so it makes sense that we would be concerned. But one of the things we have to remember is that black is an American racial category, right? It's an African American thing. And it's not so long that we've been black. We used to be colored, then Negro, and then there's been a lot of things, Afro-American, African-American. And so black is an Americanism. And here we all know the one drop rule. One drop of black blood was all it took. Now, you might have light skin privilege, but you were still black. We have to remember that is not the way the rest of the world defines race. That's not how they define what group they belong to. So if I come from a country like a Latin American country where they have almost the opposite of the one drop rule. So we have one drop of black blood makes you black. There, it's a different frame. One drop of white blood is going to give you access to some things that you're not going to get if you are a pure black person. So there's even this concept called blanqueamiento, the whitening of the race, where you can be very, very dark skinned, but if you have access to wealth, if you are culturally very Spanish in your demeanor as opposed to black in your demeanor, right? You're going to get certain benefits, and those are holdovers from slavery. And there's a lot of reasons we could talk about that. We know that Spain and Portugal were run by North Africans for a good 700 years, from 711 until around early 1400s. Well, those of us who are Africana studies majors, we know this.
We who favors.
One of the things we know, however, is that only roughly 5 out of every 100 enslaved Africans who were stolen from the continent of Africa and actually made it to the Western Hemisphere came to what we now know as the United States of America. Which means when we're talking about the Pan-African diaspora, we have to be clear that the vast majority of the diasporian members they're not English-speaking Black Americans. They are Spanish-speaking Colombians, Venezuelans, Brazil, Jamaican, Trinidadian. So there is an entire world of Pan-Africa that dwarfs the African-American presence here in this country. So we just have to be clear that other countries don't necessarily define racial categories the same. So how does this relate to the census? If I am from Jamaica, and for me, Black is an American thing. So I come here, I know that there are people who are from Trinidad, they're Trinidadian Americans. I know that there are Haitians, they're Haitians Americans. I know that there are Black people, as we are recently learned, DOS, descendants of slaves, right, of enslaved Africans. That may be a Black American thing. So if I'm on the census, prior to 2020, I'm picking Trinidad because I don't identify as Black. The same way if we were to travel to Trinidad and move there, we're still probably going to identify as Black Americans.
Or as Americans.
We're not going to identify as Trinidadians, even though racially we are the same.
Right.
Ethnically, nationally, we are different. So if I'm from Ghana and I come over here, when I think about Black, I don't think about other Ghanaians. If I'm from Nigeria, I don't think Black is applied to Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa. I think about Black as something that's American. So on the census, what has traditionally happened is I would write Trinidad, and that's it. Ain't no race.
You're not even checking Black.
No, why would I check Black?
So
That's
Black
not for me.
Doesn't get
so we don't get the benefits of counting those Black people who are Black for our purposes. We do not get the benefits, and those benefits are up to $800 billion annually in funding that goes through from federal, state, and local government. That covers everything from schools, roads, teachers, books, highways, nursing homes, hospitals. Everything that the government provides is based on data gathered by the census. If we're missing entire swaths of people who are not considering themselves Black because they have to choose and make a decision, this is a type of questioning reformulation that's going to allow them to not have to choose. So that's why I say, people, listen, you want to be on Eastern Parkway come Labor Day, which is like one of the biggest parades in the country where all the Caribbeans come out and we, wave the flags. You can do that. You can do your 23andMe and know that you're 25% from Nigeria, 58% from Ghana, 2% from wherever. You can have all of that on your wall, have every flag up, wear a bandana, do what you got to do. But on the census, once you write Ghanaian, once you write Trinidadian or Jamaican, check Black. Here, race trumps ethnicity. Racial protections are what are going to get us protected in the voting booth. Racial protections are what's going to protect us when it comes to looking at the types of investments that should be made in communities. And if we don't have that understanding, we're going to be missing a lot of people. So at the Center for Law and Social Justice, we've been using the Check Black campaign. It's something that we've used in every census for the past 2 censuses. And we're going to be using it again. So the New York City Black Leadership Advisory Coalition is a Pan-African coalition that is designed to educate African descendant communities throughout the diaspora here in New York City about what this means, because our ability to have political power, the proper amount of political power, the right number of votes to get legislation passed that is going to be beneficial to our people, all of it is tied to the census. So 2 things, check Black, and then write in whatever national category you need to make yourself feel good and sleep well at night.
Anyways, you heard the sister make her case. I disagree. I think that people should be specific. I don't agree with the law that was struck, or the ruling that was struck down, saying that undocumented have to identify with who they really are. I think that you should be specific. I think that this thing does not benefit ADOS in the long run. Counting a bunch of people who already don't identify as you, people who have another homeland that they can go back to. I just don't see how that benefits Black people in the long run. I just don't. I'm not in some anti-African rhetoric or whatnot. I just believe that people are tribalistic. People look out for their own groups. And for whatever reason, Black Americans have this kumbaya Pan-Africanist worldview that is going to be this big old thing. I don't see that happening. I don't see that existing. I think, I'm going to do my video on the ADOS hashtag and what that means to me eventually and break that down deeper. But the stuff that she's talking about, again, this is her life work, and this is what she does, and this is, you know, she fights on behalf of this Pan-African view. So of course she is going to reject the ADOS mantra. She doesn't want that divisiveness, right? Whenever Black Americans try to stick up for us, look out for us, it's always divisive, right? It is what it is. But she stated her case. I stated mine. But again, why the white supremacist, racist, Trump, Republicans ain't got nothing to do with the fact that all these heavily populated major cities are losing Black American people. They're being replaced with immigrants and illegal immigrants. That's why they want y'all to count y'all, because they know they're probably going to be in a better position to take your place and account for your loss in numbers, right? So again, I get her agenda and her reasons why she wants to do what she wants to do. I just don't think that benefits Black people. And again, why won't they address all these damn Democrat-run cities that can't keep Black people? Address that shit. They ain't got nothing to do with Trump and white supremacy and rest, all that other stuff. Google strategic gentrification. That's what people believe is what Rahm Emanuel did in Chicago before he got the hell up out of there. He made Chicago so jacked up for Black folks with the gentrification and pushing Black folks out to the suburbs and then raising the property taxes high as shit to where they can't afford their houses, and they're leaving in droves. And he's making room because, again, people hate talking about Chicago because it's like, you know, it's over talked about, but we don't realize how important that shit is, from the political element, from how it used to be the most Black millionaires at one point in time, highest Black middle class. Our political, how should I say it? The legacy of Black politics is heavily involved with Harold Washington, a Black Chicago mayor who actually had tangibles for Black people, right? It's so important there. And I'm going to do my video on the gynocracy, the two choices that Black people have to make for in the city of Chicago between Queen Sugar, as they call her on the Maze Jackson channel, and Lori Lightfoot, the lesbian who is married to a white woman, and then you got a Black woman who is a gay, but she's married to a white man. Those are your two choices in Chicago. I'm going to talk about that later on because, man, we getting blamed for this evil Black sexist, matriarchal, misogynoir nonsense when Black men, man, I gotta talk about that in a different video. To make this video not long as it could be, I'm gonna stop there and break up other things I want to talk about in a different video. But yeah, I don't co-sign what the sister was talking about in the video. I think the census is a tool, not the only tool, but just if you want to find out who is who and what is what, that census will help you just by checking the proper boxes you're supposed to be checked in. I ain't had no issue with Trump getting rid of the birthright citizenship things because that is a loophole that motherfuckers ain't supposed to be here are using to stay here. So I don't have a problem with that. And I don't have an issue. It got struck down already, but making them say who they are. If they're not here the right way, we should know. We can't count them properly and know how many illegals are here because they don't tell us, which they shouldn't if they were smart. But I'm saying I want them to tell us so we can know who you are. And whatever gonna happen. Democrats and Republicans both kicked the can down on immigration and amnesty and whatnot. Crazy thing is, Bill Clinton and Obama were tougher on illegal immigration than you can say Reagan and Bush. They were kicking the can back and forth, trying to use it for votes and whatnot, and playing the game because Democrats and Republicans benefit from illegal immigration. They get cheap labor, they get maids and all this other nonsense. Corporations get to hire people at the expense of you at a lower cost because of it. So that's why it's been kicked back and forth. And to me, it just sounds so weird and deliberate because Trump is the only person who could have done what he's done in regard to illegal immigration. Because most, again, Republicans, Bush was talking amnesty, Reagan was talking amnesty. Clinton was tough, saying, yo, y'all motherfuckers ain't supposed to be here. We got laws. Obama, he deported a lot of motherfuckers too. So it's just weird how that game works, right? That political game works. So it's like you would have not gotten another Republican outside of Trump to deal with the immigration thing because they would have kicked the can back and forth and made deals with it like they've been doing for the last 20 years anyways. But anyways, that's my video. I'm out. I don't co-sign Check Black. check what you really are, and don't be fudging up the numbers, because outside of that census space, again, when it comes to corporations fulfilling their quotas and whatnot, they can just say, "Oop, we got some Africans, some Nigerians, we got our black quota." How does that help black Americans?
The assumption is that it's going to have to raise more taxes. Well, you are concerned about the regressive nature and the disproportionate effect on lower income people. The fact of the matter is that no one thus far has made a viable proposal for how you get the revenue and somehow still don't gore somebody's ox on this. What makes you any different on that?
Well, I think a couple of things, and a lot of it is just a very different approach to governing. First and foremost, we have to get our fiscal house in order. And I think one of the most important things in that regard is making sure that we are eliminating the undue burden on middle class and low income families. The fact that we are the only metropolitan area in the country that is losing population ought to be the proverbial canary in the mine shaft, and yet there doesn't seem to be any sense of urgency around that.
It's out of Palm Springs. We're bugging out for a couple days. And I wanted to do a follow-up video to a video I did a few weeks ago called People Are Disappearing in California. People are going bankrupt. They're losing everything. And under this load of debt, there's a load of shame. And instead of saying goodbye to neighbors that they've known for 10, 20 years, people are just packing up their things and they're leaving. Many times they're leaving out of state, and they're leaving to places like Texas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, Georgia. I'm hearing Georgia a lot. It's like there's a whole migration happening from the West Coast to other parts of the country. And many times these people don't have jobs lined up. They're going to live with other family and hoping for more opportunities. The workers, the ones that are making the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, are all leaving California, and what we're left with is kind of a migrant immigrant population that makes the majority of its income under the table and then takes advantage of government programs like food stamps, welfare, low-income housing. And then on the coastal communities, you have people that seem almost unaffected by the economic situation. You know, these are multimillionaires that have either made their money in the stock market or real estate, and they've lost a little bit of their net worth, but they're still living a very, very good life. When it's cold in the winter, we're coming out here to the desert and we're hanging out here. When it gets warmer, we're headed to the coast where we're staying at state beaches, or we're headed up to like Lake Isabella or staying up in the mountains. Teachers are being pushed to the max. They already are having 30 plus students per classroom. There's a lot of stress on the parents, a lot of stress on the students, a lot of stress on the teachers, and these teachers are trying as hard as they can, but they're still getting those pink slips, and they're hoping to get hired on again, but they're kind of like everybody's in a kind of a state of limbo. They don't know where their next job is going to happen. They don't know where their next, sometimes their next meal is going to happen. Many people are at their end of the rope with their rent, with their mortgage. So it's kind of like right now what we're seeing is just a zombie-like state of Americans. There is a whole class of people that cannot pay registration fees. They cannot pay $500 red light camera fees, and they're starting to get in trouble with their licenses. And what's happening in California is they're tacking $300 on top of those fees, and right away they're suspending licenses. And Jerry Brown is setting the wheels in motion to start suspending people's licenses for non-payment of property taxes. In California, there was a time where people could make $100,000, then they're having a shift in lifestyle, shift in income, and they're making $20,000. Well, they still owe those property taxes from the time that they were making money, or those income taxes, but they just don't have the income to make those payments. Is now the state's coming in and saying, we're going to take away your licenses. So people are not only can people not pay the debts that they owe, they can't pay the taxes they owe. Now they're going to be their driver's license are going to be taken away. It's just insult to injury, and it just doesn't even make any sense. Why would you inhibit people's ability to work when you're trying to collect revenue for them? So what we're seeing on a wholesale basis is government coming down harder and harder on the American worker, and eventually I personally believe all debts, either private or public, are going to be consolidated under some government arm. Right now it's